The universe trembled. How humans became the galaxy's apex predators. Partial transcript. Emergency conclave of the Grand Equilibrium. Security classification Omega 7. Translation protocol. Direct thought transfer. The chamber pulsed with unease as Elder Ixara's consciousness dimmed the ambient bioluminescence. 37 representatives of the oldest spacefaring civilizations settled into their neural nodes, their appendages limp with dread. Only the soft hiss of atmospheric regulators broke the silence. The Galactic Security Council is now in emergency session, Ixara began, her thoughts rippling through the collective consciousness. This meeting concerns Species Desegregation XD2781. Intelligence Director Jix will present the briefing. Jix's form shifted, a manifestation of extreme distress among the crystalline Fomori. The Intelligence Director's molecular structure displayed uncharacteristic instability, fragments of silicate matter briefly disintegrating before reassembling. Representatives of the equilibrium, what I am about to share violates all established predictive models for species development. Jix's thought patterns emanated. The incident at Outpost Kappa 9 was not an isolated event. It was merely the latest in a pattern of escalating encounters with XD27. The chamber's neural network projected holographic data streams that coalesced into a spiral arm of the galaxy. A small, unremarkable, yellow star flashed. This species emerged from a Class 3 biosphere. Typical carbon-based life forms with standard evolutionary pathways, Jex continued. Their trajectory initially followed our standard developmental algorithms. They mastered fire, developed rudimentary tools, formed primitive societies, all within expected parameters. Elder Vorak of the methane-breathing Talalosians emitted a pulse of impatience. We are aware of the standard xenobiological report. Why have 37 leaders across 7 galactic regions been summoned with such urgency? Jix's crystalline form pulsed with what translated as resignation, because what happened next defies all established patterns of species development. Their technological advancement underwent a phase transition unlike anything we've documented across 18 million catalogued species. The hologram shifted to display a temporal progression. The assembly collectively recoiled as the curve shot upward at an impossible angle, from primitive combustion engines to nuclear fission in less than a single planetary orbit around their star, from basic atmospheric flight to walking on their satellite in 6 planetary revolutions, from rudimentary computational systems to quantum interface in mere decades. The Volzarian delegates' appendages fluttered in disbelief. This violates all established laws of technological progression. No species moves from metallurgy to antimatter containment this rapidly. That is precisely why we've convened, Elder Ixara interjected. But their technological acceleration, while concerning, is not the primary threat. Director Jex continue with the behavioral analysis. Jix projected new data streams. They call themselves humans, and they possess psychological traits that our xenocultural algorithms cannot reconcile. A series of incidents appeared in the neural network. Outpost Kappa 9. Research station observing primitive life forms on an ice moon. 3 observers disappeared. Investigation revealed humans had detected the outpost, despite perception-altering fields, and established their own observation post to study our observers. The Dramarian ambassador's thoughts radiated alarm. They were watching us, watching them. How is this possible? Sector 7J, mining operation in asteroid belt, neighboring human territory. Humans detected quantum variances from our equipment and developed shielding technology within 2.3 cycles to neutralize our sensors. Deep Space Monitoring Station 12. Human vessel approached station despite being well beyond their known exploration range. When contact was attempted, they responded with a message in 17 of our languages, including 3 extinct dialectal variations that exist only in our deepest archives. The Eleron representative disconnected from the neural link momentarily, a sign of extreme distress among their kind. This species somehow obtained information from our most secure databases, the Aileron's thoughts projected when they reconnected. How widespread is this infiltration? Jix's crystalline form dimmed. Unknown, but the most alarming incident occurred 4 cycles ago. The neural network displayed footage from a binary star system far from human territory. A small exploration vessel with primitive propulsion approached a research outpost studying quantum fluctuations. This human craft shouldn't have detected our presence. Our station existed partially phased outside conventional space-time. Yet, not only did they locate it, they attempted communication using frequencies that precisely matched our neural patterns. The station commander, following protocol for unauthorized contact, activated defense systems designed to induce terror and madness, the standard procedure for deterring primitive species who stumble upon advanced technology. The chamber fell silent as the footage continued. The human vessel, instead of retreating as expected, moved closer. A transmission was received. Jix hesitated before playing the recording. "We understand what you're trying to do," a calm voice echoed through the chamber. "Your fear-inducing technologies operate by manipulating neurological responses tied to survival instincts. Fascinating approach. However, we've spent millennia teaching ourselves to master our fear, to channel it, to find exhilaration in it. What you intend as deterrence, we experience as illumination." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the collective consciousness. The humans then deployed what appeared to be a primitive information packet. Jix continued. "Our systems allowed it through basic screening, assessing it as harmless mathematical equations. Instead, it was a self-evolving algorithm that interfaced directly with our consciousness network. It did not damage or corrupt our systems. It simply observed, then withdrew." Elder Ixara's form trembled slightly. "They were studying how our minds work." "Yes," Jix confirmed, "but the true significance wasn't apparent until we analyzed their propulsion system. Their vessel utilized standard fusion technology with one wattle modification. They had somehow incorporated elements of our own dimensional folding techniques, technology they couldn't possibly possess." The Volzarian representative's thoughts flashed with alarm. "They reverse-engineered our technology by observing it in use. Worse," Jix projected, "evidence suggests they developed it independently through theoretical models that anticipated our approach. Their minds work differently. Where we seek harmony and equilibrium, they thrive on discord and transformation. Their concept of physics embraces paradox rather than resolving it." A new series of data points appeared: human historical records, art forms, philosophical treatises. They deliberately expose themselves to simulated terror and call it entertainment. They formulate thousands of theoretical models of reality, knowing most will fail. They find pleasure in stories of their own extinction. They imagine predatory entities far more powerful than themselves and then develop strategies to defeat these imagined threats. The Dramarian ambassador's thoughts pulsed with confusion. "Are you suggesting they prepare for threats that don't exist?" "I'm suggesting," Jix responded, "that by constantly imagining worst-case scenarios, when they encounter actual advanced civilizations like ours, they've already developed potential countermeasures." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled across the collective consciousness. "Most disturbing is their relationship with knowledge itself," Jix continued. "Where our civilizations seek to preserve and maintain equilibrium, humans appear driven to constantly dismantle and reconstruct their understanding of reality. They call this process science, but it functions more like controlled destruction of established truth." The neural network displayed the aftermath of Outpost Kappa 9. The facility had been methodically disassembled, each component labeled and arranged in patterns suggesting analysis. This species doesn't just adapt to environments. They force environments to adapt to them. They don't accept limitations. They treat them as temporary inconveniences, and most alarmingly, they don't fear the unknown. They hunger for it. Elder Ixara's consciousness expanded to address the assembly. 4 cycles ago, we classified humans as an emerging intelligence of moderate concern. Today, I am officially redesignating them as a Class 1 existential variable. The chamber erupted in patterns of shock and protest. No species had received such classification in over 50,000 cycles. The term apex predator exists in their biological lexicon, Jix concluded. It describes an organism that exists at the top of a food chain, with no natural predators. Humans understand this concept not just as a biological classification, but as an aspiration. They have spent their evolutionary history striving to become the apex predator of their world. Now they look to the stars with the same intention. The holographic display showed a final image, a human vessel departing the research station, its primitive hull bearing a simple symbol, a stylized outline of their species with arms outstretched toward a field of stars. They don't see us as gods to be worshipped or as threats to be feared. Elder Ixara's thoughts resonated with finality. They see us as puzzles to be solved, and that, representatives of the equilibrium, is why the universe trembles. Transcript continues. Emergency conclave of the grand equilibrium. Temporal marker. 17 cycles later. Security classification Omega 9. The chamber's neural network vibrated with unprecedented strain as it processed the new data. Several representatives had withdrawn from the collective consciousness, their biological forms unable to withstand the cognitive dissonance. We must acknowledge what the evidence reveals, Elder Ixara projected, her thought pattern stripped of all ceremonial formality. Continue, Director Jex. The intelligence director's crystalline form had deteriorated further, fracture lines visible across previously pristine surfaces, physical manifestations of prolonged exposure to human cognition patterns. The Turian incident was the first unequivocal confirmation of their capabilities, Jix projected as the neural network displayed a desolate planetoid orbiting a neutron star. This mining colony harvested exotic materials from the star's radiation belt. 3 cycles ago, a spatial anomaly formed in the system, a quantum instability that threatened to collapse the entire stellar region into a pocket dimension. The holographic display showed mathematical models of space-time degradation spreading across the sector. Our finest minds calculated that the anomaly would require approximately 700 cycles to stabilize using controlled energy injection. We evacuated the colony and established a perimeter to contain the affected region. The Dramarian ambassador's thoughts pulsed with recognition. I remember this incident, the anomaly, unexpectedly stabilized after only 2 cycles. Our scientists attributed it to a fortunate random fluctuation in the quantum field. That was the official explanation, Jix confirmed. The truth was classified under Omega protocols. 17 human ships entered the system after we established our perimeter. They were warned about the danger. They acknowledged receipt of our warnings. Then they proceeded directly toward the anomaly. The holographic display showed small, primitive-looking vessels approaching the swirling vortex of distorted space-time. Our observers expected immediate destruction. Instead, the humans positioned themselves in a precise geometric formation around the anomaly and deployed what appeared to be crude fusion devices, hundreds of them into the quantum instability. The Alara representative's thoughts flashed with disbelief. They used explosive devices? On a quantum instability? Yes, Jix projected. A solution so primitive and dangerous that none of our scientists would have even contemplated it. The resulting chain reaction should have catastrophically accelerated the collapse. The display showed the detonation sequence, a perfectly timed cascade of explosions that rippled through the quantum field. Instead, the humans had somehow calculated that the release of energy, if precisely synchronized with the anomaly's fluctuation pattern, would force a phase transition that would stabilize the field. They intentionally used an inherently unpredictable and chaotic approach to solve a problem that required absolute precision. The chamber pulsed with collective incomprehension. Their solution worked because it was fundamentally unpredictable, Jix continued. Where our approach would have attempted to impose order on chaos through gradual manipulation, they introduced calculated disorder to shock the system into stability. 700 cycles of careful work, accomplished in hours through methods we would consider madness. Elder Vorik's methane sacs contracted in what translated as profound unease. This violates our most fundamental approach to physics: control, precision, predictability. These are the foundations of advanced technology. Not for them, Jex projected. Humans embrace chaos as a tool. They deliberately introduce randomness into their systems. They call it creative destruction, the deliberate dismantling of functional systems to force innovation. The neural network displayed footage, retrieved from the human vessels during the incident. It showed the crew calmly making minute adjustments as alarms blared and systems overloaded around them. Note their psychological responses, Jix indicated. Their biochemistry shows elevated stress markers, yet they appear to function optimally under these conditions. Where our species seek homeostasis, humans actively pursue states of controlled instability. The Volzarian delegates' appendages contracted in revulsion. They thrive on disorder. They harness it, Jix corrected. And most disturbing, they actively seek out crisis scenarios as catalysts for development. This recursively enhances their crisis response capabilities, creating an accelerating evolutionary loop. Elder Dixiter interrupted, her thought patterns sharp with urgency. The psychological impact assessment director. Jix projected a new data stream. Multiple representatives who have closely studied human behavior have suffered severe psychological degradation. 17 researchers have experienced complete neural collapse after prolonged exposure to human decision matrices. The pattern recognition centers of their minds simply shattered. How? Asked the Talalosian elder. We have catalogued 18 million sapient species. None have triggered this response. Because human cognition contains fundamental contradictions that our neural structures cannot reconcile, Jix explained. They simultaneously maintain contradictory beliefs as working hypotheses. They intentionally pursue paths they know will fail to eliminate those possibilities. They find meaning in futility. This creates recursive loops that our linear thought processes cannot process. Perhaps most significantly, Jix continued, humans appear to experience a neurochemical reward response to seemingly insurmountable challenges. Where our species evolved to avoid existential threats, humans evolved to seek them out. They call this adventure. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled across the collective consciousness. And now, Elder Ixara projected solemnly, we face the Proxima crisis. The neural network displayed a region of space where reality itself appeared to be unraveling. Colors shifting outside normal perception spectra, matter phasing between states of existence. The dimensional breach has expanded beyond our containment capabilities. Ixara continued. Our models predict total collapse of 13 sectors within 60 cycles, with cascading failures affecting potentially 1/4 of the galaxy. The dimensional corruption is spreading at an accelerating rate. The Alaran representative disconnected from the neural link again, unable to process the implications. After our standard protocols failed, Jix projected, we reluctantly shared information about the crisis with human representatives, hoping their unorthodox approach might yield alternative perspectives. The neural network displayed the human response, a detailed proposal that caused several more representatives to disconnect from the collective consciousness in distress. They propose intentionally creating a controlled dimensional singularity adjacent to the breach. Jix explained, a second controlled tier in reality that would, in their words, create interference patterns with the original breach, resulting in mutual annihilation through dimensional resonance. This is madness, the Volzarian delegate projected. Creating a second breach would exponentially increase the risk of total galactic collapse. Their calculations suggest otherwise, Jex responded. They believe the interaction between the two breaches would follow what they call wave function collapse principles. The two tiers would theoretically cancel each other out, like opposing wave patterns in a fluid medium. Has this ever been attempted? Elder Vorak demanded.
Never,
Jix admitted. The concept itself violates our basic understanding of dimensional stability. Creating intentional breaches in reality is forbidden under the first universal protocol. And what do the humans propose to create this controlled breach? Elder Ixera asked. Jix's crystalline form dimmed further. They have provided designs for a device they call a reality inverter. It would momentarily reverse the polarity of existence itself within a localized field. The technical specifications include manipulating forces that our science has deemed fundamentally immutable. And if it fails, the Dramarian ambassador projected, total dimensional collapse would spread at exponentially increased velocity. Jix responded. Essentially, we would be accelerating our own extinction. The chamber erupted in chaotic thought patterns until Elder Ixora imposed order. Representatives of the equilibrium, she projected, we face an unprecedented choice. Our conventional approaches have failed. The dimensional breach continues to expand. The humans have offered a solution that contradicts all our established knowledge, yet their track record of solving seemingly impossible problems cannot be dismissed. The neural network displayed a waiting human vessel. On its bridge stood a single figure, a biological entity of unremarkable appearance. When magnified, its facial features displayed an expression that the translation protocol struggled to interpret. This is Fleet Commander Aaron Mitchell, Jix projected. He has volunteered to personally deploy the reality inverter at the breach point. His final communication was, we understand your reluctance. Where you see reckless action, we see calculated risk. Where you see certain failure, we see potential success. This is how humanity has always faced extinction, by staring into the abyss until we find a path through it. We need your answer now. Elder Ixara's consciousness expanded to address the assembly. The human vessel awaits our response. They are prepared to deploy their device immediately. We must decide now whether to authorize this approach or continue with conventional containment efforts that our models suggests will ultimately fail. The chamber fell silent as the representatives faced an impossible choice. Trust the incomprehensible logic of a species that defied all established patterns, or reject their solution and face almost certain annihilation. The holographic display showed Fleet Commander Mitchell's face again. The translation algorithms finally identified the expression he wore. It was anticipation. Final transcript. Emergency conclave of the Grand Equilibrium. Temporal marker. Immediate continuation. Security classification Omega 10 absolute. I vote to authorize the human approach, declared Elder Vorak, breaking the paralyzed silence that had gripped the chamber. The methane-breathing Talosian's decisive statement rippled through the collective consciousness like a shock wave. One by one, the representatives cast their votes. The tally swung between acceptance and rejection, until Elder Ixora cast the final decision. We accept the human solution, she projected to Fleet Commander Mitchell. The neural network magnified his face as he received the transmission. His expression shifted subtly, muscles contracting around the eyes in a configuration the translation algorithms identified as determination. The human vessel accelerated toward the dimensional breach, trailing smaller craft that positioned themselves in complex geometric patterns around the anomaly. Observational probes in position, Jix announced. Full telemetry streaming. The chamber watched as Mitchell's vessel approached the breach. The reality inverter, a deceptively simple-looking device, extended from the ship's hull. Energy readings spiked beyond measurable parameters as the device activated, creating a controlled tear in space-time directly adjacent to the expanding breach. What happened next defied all prediction algorithms. The two-dimensional breaches began to interact, not with the catastrophic expansion many had feared, but with subtle, almost elegant perturbations that rippled through both anomalies. The patterns grew increasingly complex, recursive structures forming and dissolving in nanoseconds. "The breaches are communicating," Jex observed, crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. Then, without warning, both breaches contracted violently. The neural network struggled to process the readings as space-time itself seemed to fold inward at the interaction point. A blinding flash of energy erupted, then nothing. Both anomalies had vanished, leaving only normal space behind. Dimensional stability restored, Jix confirmed. The human solution was successful. A wave of relief surged through the collective consciousness, quickly replaced by renewed apprehension as Mitchell's vessel emerged from the energy discharge apparently undamaged. Requesting immediate access to the conclave came Mitchell's transmission. "What we've just witnessed changes everything." The chamber's security protocols activated automatically at such an unprecedented request. Elder Exara overrode them with a direct command. "Grant access," she ordered, "but establish containment protocols." Minutes later, Fleet Commander Aaron Mitchell stood physically within the chamber. The first non-member species ever permitted entry to the conclave's inner sanctum. His biological form appeared even more fragile in person, a soft-bodied carbon entity that seemed impossibly vulnerable among the varied physiologies of the Equilibrium representatives. "Thank you for trusting us," Mitchell began, his voice translated into thought patterns for the assembly. "But there's something you need to understand about what just happened. Something we've kept from you until now." The neural network activated around him, responding to his neural implants, technology far more advanced than humans had previously revealed, possessing. "The reality inverter didn't just create a controlled breach," Mitchell explained. "It created a consciousness bridge." Images appeared in the neural network, human brains connected to sophisticated interfaces, thousands of them working in perfect synchronization. "What you're seeing is Project Ascension," Mitchell continued. 5,000 human volunteers neurologically linked to create a collective consciousness, capable of directly perceiving and manipulating dimensional forces. The assembly erupted in patterns of shock and disbelief. "Impossible," the Elleran representative projected. "No biological mind can directly perceive dimensional structures. The cognitive architecture required doesn't exist in organic beings." "It doesn't exist in your species," Mitchell corrected, "but it does in ours. This is what we've been hiding, what we hoped we wouldn't have to reveal." Mitchell's neural implants fed new data into the network. The human brain displayed in cross-section, highlighting structures that pulsed with activity patterns unlike anything in the Equilibrium xenobiological database. "Evolution took a different path on Earth," Mitchell explained. "While most species in the galaxy evolved to perceive reality as stable and predictable, a survival advantage in most environments, humans evolved to perceive reality as fundamentally malleable." "That's not possible," Jix objected. "Reality is objective. Perception doesn't change fundamental physical laws." "Actually, it does," Mitchell countered. "At the quantum level, observation affects reality. Most species evolved to filter out this quantum uncertainty, to perceive only the stable macroscopic layer of existence. This created advanced civilizations built on precision and predictability, but it left a blind spot, an inability to directly interact with reality at its most fundamental level." Mitchell gestured to the neural network, which now displayed human cultural artifacts, artistic creations, scientific theories, philosophical treatises. "Humans never developed this filter. We perceive quantum uncertainty directly, experiencing reality as a spectrum of probabilities rather than fixed states. What you call chaos, we experience as potential. What you see as contradictions, we perceive as complementary states. This is why our art embraces paradox, why our science advances through seemingly irrational leaps, why we seek out crisis and conflict. The chamber fell silent as the implications rippled through the collective consciousness. The dimensional breach was never going to respond to your containment methods, Mitchell continued, because the breach itself was conscious, or rather it was a manifestation of consciousness from a higher dimensional plane attempting to interact with our universe. What are you saying? Elder Ixora demanded. I'm saying that what you perceived as a tear in reality was actually a form of communication. The reality inverter didn't seal the breach. It answered it. The 5,000 volunteers in Project Ascension formed a consciousness bridge that allowed direct dialogue with the entity on the other side. The neural network displayed the interaction from the human perspective, not as a catastrophic physical phenomenon, but as a complex exchange of information between two forms of consciousness operating on different dimensional planes. This is why your species can't solve certain classes of problems, Mitchell explained. Your evolutionary path optimized for stability and homeostasis, for maintaining equilibrium, as your conclave's name suggests. But some threats, some opportunities, some realities can only be engaged through embracing instability and transformation, through embracing chaos. Elder Ixora's consciousness expanded to address Mitchell directly. If what you say is true, what was this entity attempting to communicate? Mitchell's expression changed. The translation algorithm has identified it as grave concern. A warning, he answered. There are predators in the higher dimensions, entities that consume entire realms of existence. One is approaching our shared reality. The breach was an attempt to warn us and provide defensive measures. The chamber erupted in patterns of fear and disbelief. How can we verify this claim? Elder Vorak demanded. You can't, Mitchell admitted. Not with your current perceptual framework. But we can help you develop the necessary interfaces to at least partially perceive what we see naturally. And we should trust you with this, the Dromarian ambassador projected skeptically. A species that concealed its true capabilities and has just claimed to communicate with entities beyond our comprehension. Mitchell's response was immediate. You trusted us to solve the dimensional breach. We did. Now we're telling you there are greater threats coming, threats only we can currently perceive. You don't have to trust our intentions. Trust our survival instinct. If these dimensional predators consume this reality, we die too. Elder Ixora's form pulsed with what translated as reluctant acceptance. What do you propose, Commander Mitchell? A new compact, he replied. Humans will serve as the dimensional perception specialists for the equilibrium, your early warning system and first response for threats that exist beyond your perceptual framework. In exchange, we need access to your technological infrastructure to scale Project Ascension. And if we refuse? Jakes asked. Mitchell's expression shifted again. The algorithms identified it as resignation. Then we'll do it alone, as we've always done. But the defenses will be smaller, the warning time shorter. Billions more will die unnecessarily. Elder Ixora's consciousness expanded to its maximum extent, enveloping the entire chamber. Her decision would shape galactic policy for millennia to come. The equilibrium has maintained peace among the stars for 50,000 cycles by ensuring that no single species could threaten the established order, she began. Today we face a species that fundamentally challenges our understanding of reality itself. A species whose mental architecture allows them to perceive and interact with dimensions of existence closed to us. The chamber pulsed with anticipation as Elder Ixora continued. In all our history, we have never encountered a species both so dangerous and so necessary. Humans don't just solve problems differently. They perceive different problems entirely. Their minds exist partially in realms we cannot access. This makes them both the greatest threat and the greatest potential ally the equilibrium has ever encountered. Elder Ixora's consciousness focused directly on Mitchell. We accept your proposal, Commander, but with conditions. A joint council will oversee Project Ascension. Humans will be integrated into our defense networks, but with oversight protocols, and most importantly, the equilibrium will begin a fundamental reassessment of our understanding of consciousness itself. Mitchell nodded. A human gesture the translation algorithms identified as agreement. There's an ancient human concept I believe is relevant here. Elder Ixora projected to the assembly. Symbiosis, the mutually beneficial relationship between fundamentally different organisms. What we are establishing today is cosmic symbiosis. We offer stability, structure, and vast technological resources. Humans offer perceptual frameworks we cannot achieve and crisis response capabilities we cannot match. The neural network displayed a new symbol. The traditional emblem of the equilibrium now intertwined with the human figure reaching toward the stars. The universe still trembles, Elder Ixara concluded, but now it trembles with possibility as well as dread, for we have discovered that humans are not merely apex predators, they are apex perceivers. They see what cannot be seen, they dare what should not be dared, and in a cosmos where reality itself is under threat, this may be the quality that preserves existence itself. Mitchell's expression shifted one final time. The translation algorithms identified it not as anticipation but as something far more profound. Hope.